How's it going, guys? Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Phil Talk Sports Podcast and a sports movie review. We have beer. I have Coach Luke Schulz with me, which means it's time to review another sports movie. Luke, how's it going?
It's going great.
It's going great. It's going pretty great.
It's a little late.
It is a little late. It is 11:22 in the evening on a Saturday. We've had several drinks. We watched UCF destroy Temple.
Well, we watched the movie first.
Yes.
We popped open beers during the movie. Then we watched UCF destroy Temple. So we popped open more beers. And the next thing you know, I mean, like, we're at like a 7, 8, something like that. So it's all good.
Yeah, we're flirting with double digits as far as drinks go. But this is the first time. Normally we watch the movie at some point in the week, and then we get together on the weekend and review the movie. So we're only 2 hours removed from watching the movie. I've seen it a handful of times. For Luke, it was the first time watching. I should probably explain the movie we're watching. 42, starring Chadwick Boseman, which we did mention in our last movie review that we'd be doing. The late Chadwick Boseman, actually, which is the reason we had this on our list, but we kind of let it skip a few movies because we felt
pushed
like
it forward.
Yeah,
after what happened,
it felt worth doing. Which it was kind of funny because we mentioned him in the, not that he was in it, but in the Friday Night Lights review. Obviously, we talked about Michael B. Jordan and his great performance in Black Panther. So we kind of pseudo talked about Boseman a little bit.
Yeah, we did.
And
I remember us looking back at that and thinking, wow, that was really ironic.
Yeah.
Or maybe coincidental,
yeah,
I should say. But yeah, and then we brought him up and we were like, oh, well, we need to make this the next movie then.
Right. So, it's coincidental that he was, talked about in a movie review that he wasn't even in. And this is a movie that a sports movie he starred in, whereas the only other sports movie that he was in was Draft Day, which maybe we'll get to that at one point. But he has a much smaller role in that, so this was definitely the way to go. And again, I've seen this movie a handful of times. I saw it in theaters. I ended up, I bought it, and given where we live in the Daytona Beach area, Jackie Robinson has a cultural significance where we live. Jackie Robinson Ballpark in Daytona Beach, being named after him. And I'm lucky enough to work for the Daytona Tortugas when we play baseball. Screw you, COVID, because we didn't get to play this summer. I'm actually rocking the Jackie Robinson Tortugas jersey right now because it made sense to me. But long story short, it felt significant for multiple reasons. For whatever reason, for me, baseball sports movies seem to be the best. It seems easier to tell a story in a baseball movie because there's a lot of downtime in the game itself, and it gives you time to tell stories sometimes. Like some of my favorite sports movies tend to be baseball movies because you get the chance to do that. So I'll just real quick, Luke, we've kind of been building this one up for a while. It's been about a month and a half since our last one. We finally got around to watching it, but how did you feel about just the concept of it? I'm sure you know a little bit about Jackie Robinson, but do you feel you get the whole story after watching this?
Well, when I think about it, it's probably not the whole story. It's not even close to the whole story, but I have a much better understanding than I did.
Mm-hmm.
I always knew that Jackie Robinson Stadium was there in Daytona, but other than knowing he was the first black MLB player,
right,
and knowing that he was an amazing player, that's pretty much the extent of my knowledge. Afterwards, there was a big fuck racist mood that I had.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go and say that I don't care what anyone else thinks. If you're a redneck, I know we live in Edgewater or anything like that.
Deep Edgewater.
Yeah, fuck racist. And so after that, that's I was kind of in just a mood where I felt happy for him. I felt happy about everything that he accomplished, and but there was highs and lows throughout the movie. Especially in that hallway scene where he goes down. I kind of choked up there for a second. Yeah. I didn't want to admit it, but I felt emotional.
Yeah.
It was a fantastic film though for just the first viewing, and I know it's not going to be the only time I watch that movie.
It is one of those that if you watched it not knowing, let's say you don't watch sports at all, and you're like, this was a crazy movie, but there's no way that was this one. You can file this under a movie that you don't think it was a true story because it was so over the top. But I have no reason to believe maybe something was kind of pushed to the extreme, but a lot of this movie is based on obviously factual events and having to deal with the way the world was in the 50s.
I mean, it's not just a sports movie; it's also a history movie.
Yes.
In a way, and without making it a documentary, they still took those, what do they call it? Artistic liberties.
Yeah.
And still made it as historically accurate as possible. I mean, we got to see Daytona Beach and Sanford and DeLand, which is that all of those are like right next to us. I go to DeLand every day when I go to work. And so you
I
got
was
to
gonna
see.
say that's an
It's next
hour
door.
in any direction for any of us, and like we're Florida natives, and when you see Florida in movies, you're maybe talking about Orlando, but it's mostly Miami, maybe Jacksonville, maybe Orlando and places like that. But to see, like you mentioned, like DeLand and Sanford and Daytona Beach. If the movie isn't about NASCAR, you don't say Daytona Beach in anything. So it is cool to see places like that recognized in the historical significance.
Or Spring Break or something
Yeah,
like
sure,
that.
a Spring Break movie. But the movie kind of starts with the Brooklyn Dodgers owner Branch Rickey, who's played by Harrison Ford, which I didn't realize till I looked back. It was one of those, like, I think you explained it before we even started recording. He must be in like a heavy suit or a fat suit, as they call it, because he did
that or it was just a rough time of his life, which we all hit that.
Sure,
You know.
But so when I look at this guy, like Harrison Ford is one of the most iconic actors of all time. But like when I looked at him, I didn't realize that's who it was.
Oh, that's Han Solo.
Yeah, it's Han Solo.
Indiana Jones.
Yeah, and it did not look that way.
But he played like an 80-year-old. I don't know how old the guy was, but I mean, but he played
60, 70. Yeah.
And not Harrison
Jones.
Harrison Ford, he's great at playing a cranky old guy.
Which he does.
Hell, when he was in his 20s, he was a cranky old guy,
And
we all know that guy.
Yeah. The opening scene is essentially him. He's flipping through a newspaper, and he goes, "I'm gonna bring a Negro player to Major League Baseball," and he has two of his, higher up people.
I think one of them was a lawyer. I don't entirely know, but he was checking to see like
if it was legal,
if there's any laws against it. Because he asked him, and he goes, "There's no laws against it, but you're going to be an outcast."
Yeah.
And he goes, "So be it."
Yeah. It's actually a great line. He says, because baseball is, even to this day in 2020, unwritten rules is a thing that plagues baseball.
Well, he says you're not breaking any laws, but you're breaking a code.
A code.
Yeah.
And he says one of the many great lines in this movie. He says, you break a law and you get away with it, people think you're smart. But if you break an unwritten law, you're an outcast, which is true. And baseball has a lot of that. You don't bunt in a no-hitter when you're up at this point. You don't throw at a batter because of something somebody else did. You don't flip your bat after a home run. The list goes on and on. But baseball has been plagued by unwritten rules and codes. And there's this was the first one, that you don't bring in, a Negro.
I mean, it's a perfect metaphor for America.
Yeah.
America, since we first started, there's certain codes and all that. There's certain laws. And then eventually precedent is set.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Because most racism isn't super loud. It's subtle, and it's a glance, and it's this and it's that. And it comes down to it. And I do love how, it becomes more than an idea. And I don't know, obviously, did this whole thing happen because the Brooklyn Dodgers manager was sitting in his office one day and said, "You know what? Why don't we just bring in I assume there's more to the story that."
Well, he did talk about it earlier. He said that he used to play with Charles Thomas.
Yeah, I believe that was the name. Yeah,
I might be off a little bit.
Yes, in college. Yes, you're right.
And he said that he let that racism slide, and it kind of like haunted him a little bit
because he felt that guy could have been the Jackie Robinson that he's looking for.
And I know I mentioned this earlier, but I'm pretty sure there was an episode on Drunk History about him. About how he was the first like Jackie Robinson, except he was playing catcher, and he let that shit slide. It's not excusable, but when there's so much pressure, when you've grown up in this setting where that sort of thing is acceptable, and they even referenced it a little bit in the movie when that kid sees his dad, calling Jackie those names and yelling out those things and all that, and he's looking out, all worried at the crowd and all that, and looking at his dad, and then he starts yelling the same thing. It becomes acceptable because you're trying to please, the first inspiration that we have is our family.
Sure.
And if our family says something is okay, then we assume, well, that's how the norm is.
Right.
And then we have to, once we branch out and we realize, oh, that's wrong, there's a little educational point there. you know, and in his case, that was years down the road.
Yeah.
Where he finally had to try and make amends. It was with a different person, you know, and in the beginning of the movie, money was the motivation. I'm not gonna sugarcoat that.
I don't think he sugarcoats it either. I
No,
think
yeah,
he kind of makes it known.
they made it clear. He says,
said
well,
there's a lot
green is the money of color and all that. All money is green.
He said there's a lot of, the
Yeah.
Negro population in Brooklyn can't be ignored. If we can bring in a player, that brings in their money, and all money is green, and that's the only color I care about. Something to that effect. So I don't think he hides the fact that it is
not in the beginning
money motivated.
And I'm wondering if he did that just because of the people he was in the room with. You know, maybe it could be one of those things where, you know, like he said later on, he's trying to make amends for that situation that happened. But how do I present it to people who are ignorant?
Yeah,
you know, so true. Let me present it to them in a way that they understand money. You know, a lawyer definitely understands money. I'm going to go ahead and bash lawyers out there. My brother's a lawyer, so, you know, I can.
Yeah.
Anyone can. But he, you know, he goes ahead and presents it in a way that may seem a little bit more stable to them, more acceptable to them. And then as time goes on, guess what? One of them is defending Jackie Robinson. He's heated over the people that are making fun of Jackie. And and he even talks about it at one point where in the beginning, oh, you were against this.
You were the first one to stand up.
Yeah, you said, no, this isn't right. And now you're standing up for Jackie. You know, so it's just funny how do they say it in the Office? Oh, how the turntables.
How the turntables.
So I think he presented it as a money solution in the beginning, and I called him out on that in the beginning. You know that.
Yeah.
But I was wrong. I think there was other motivations. I think that he was acting. I think that he was doing it to please those two men in the room.
We tried really hard because, we don't normally watch the movie together. We normally watch it on our own and then come together. So, like, we paused it a few times and talked through a couple little things, but we did our best to save it for the podcast, if you will.
Yeah.
But, like I said,
we did talk about a couple things.
Yeah, but that was one of the things, like, clearly it was money motivated from the start. And one of my favorite...
Or at least it seemed that way. Again, I think I was wrong in the long run.
Because he does eventually
because he talks about that story.
Yeah, a moral reason to do what he did. But I love the part, you know, a scene or two down the line where they're, okay, we're going to do this. It's obviously happening. And then there's the process of picking the player. Because if you pick the wrong player, this blows up. And one of the player on the top of the stack, which I do forget the name, but it was, you know, a player playing great in the Negro League. And he says, this guy's great. He's a little too soft. I don't think he can handle what's about to happen. They move on to the next guy. This guy is also great, but he's older. And I think the quote is, I need a guy with a future, not a past. So it would have been, you know, a well-to-do player and then a guy with a great track record, but his best years are behind him. And then, you know, I assume he wasn't the third guy on the pile, but eventually they come across, you know, Jackie Robinson, this guy, which Dan Patrick, the great sportscaster, and they even mentioned it in the thing. He was a four sport athlete at UCLA.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think it was track and field, basketball, baseball, and I don't think it was football, so I assume it was something else. But Dan Patrick is quoting saying, the craziest thing about Jackie Robinson is baseball, out of the four sports he played, it was the fourth one he was most talented in.
Oh, really?
So that, and it just so happened to be, and if you go to Jackie Robinson Ballpark at Daytona Beach, Florida, they have a mini Jackie Robinson museum you can walk through, and they talk about his track and field feats and his, you know, long jump and all the stuff, and you can try and match his long jump, which I never have. I've tried several times, but you know, so the fact that, you know, baseball, you know, I'm sure he loved baseball and everything, but a lot of people have noted it's not his, you know, it was not his number one sport. I think track probably was. I think he, for his era, was one of the fastest players at the time. But the fact that, you know, a guy that baseball could just be, you know, a thing he did to kill time between basketball season or you know, track and field
athletes.
season. Yeah, multi-sport athlete where,
so
you know,
jealous.
he did four of them, and that was his fourth one. But, you know, they stumble upon him. They call him in, and at the time he's playing for the Kansas City Monarchs, I believe, which, fun fact, I don't know if we'll ever get to this movie, but in Sandlot, the black kid who's the pitcher is wearing a Monarchs hat in that movie, which would make sense for the time period because that was the...
Well, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt.
No, go for it.
But one of the main reasons he chose him was not only because it was younger and all that, It was also because at UCLA, which I mean, I could be wrong, but I think California was a little bit ahead of the times, and so they were mixing
A lot
whites
more
and
progressive.
yeah, they were more progressive. They were mixing races together, and so he's already played with whites before, so
Mhm.
he's already used to hanging out with them. Well, not just hanging out with them, but playing with them. You
Yeah.
know, but you got to think about on the field and off the field at the same time. And at the same time, he had a military history,
Yeah.
and and so he's used to not only working hard, but working hard with people of other races, people of other nationalities,
Mhm.
for that matter. And on top of that, they mentioned, I'm sorry, it's still real fresh, that he didn't exactly follow. He followed the rules, but he stood up for what he thought was right.
He
So
was a bit of a hothead.
yeah, exactly. He didn't exactly have the longest temper. Not that he just went out looking for fights or anything like that, but he wouldn't lay down either. And he had guts. And they kind of talked about it when they first met. He was talking about, what do I need you for? I don't need you to have the guts to fight. I need you to have the guts to not fight, which
Yeah.
takes. I mean, with all the provoking and all that throughout the movie. I mean, God.
It was something along the lines of like, I need someone that has the wherewithal to fight, but has the common sense to not fight back. It
It's
was,
not just common sense. I mean, it's much more than common
yeah.
sense, in my opinion. I mean, you know how much control that would take? I mean, that's it's because it's so past common sense. It's so, especially when someone is calling you, a porch monkey or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
To have that level of control is, yeah, I don't, I. Mm.
So you jump to the point, So the meeting with him is fun. He's like, I'll pay you. I think it's $600 a month with a
3,500.
$3,500 signing bonus. Is that agreeable? And he's like, that's fine, but what are we really talking about here? And he explains, he's like, year one, if you're as good as advertised, you're gonna play with Montreal, the minor league team, and then my goal is, so this would have been, I think, 45, so by 46, 47 to be playing with the Brooklyn Dodgers, and
They hit that goal.
yeah,
Yeah,
he kind of
most of the movie takes place in 47, I think, right?
yeah, really, the bulk of the movie is his rookie season, which he did in fact win Rookie of the Year that year. Which I can't. That had to have been a rough voting room. You got to think of all the old whites that would vote on such an award.
Mm-hmm.
It was probably a hard thing for them to. I would imagine his numbers would have been undeniable. And this is one of the things we talked about before coming on
Gotta
here.
look at facts.
You got to look at facts. Facts don't care about your feelings. And in the
Exactly.
minors, he was hitting apparently over 600. I don't remember if it was 6 or 650. But then he comes into the majors, and like honestly, when he comes to the majors, you almost have to look at his numbers in a different way, because a lot of guys probably walked him because they didn't want to be the guy that let the black guy get a hit on him. They probably threw it. He led the league in hit by pitch. That's a lot of more at bats taken away from him that the average guy would have. I'm sure he was still near the 300, if not above it. So it probably took a while for people to come around to it, but maybe he was just that much higher than them. But to win Rookie of the Year in a situation that nobody wanted you to, I don't know who votes on such a thing in the 50s, but like that in itself would be an accomplishment.
Well, I mean, and that's the thing is like, just as a batter alone, I think what they said was in the minors he was batting what 650,
Oh yeah, over
which is
600.
incredible. Yeah, and then I think in the majors so far, I think I could be wrong, but I thought they said something about 350
That's probably
in his
accurate.
first year. Yeah. And again, I could be wrong about that. But then he was also used to playing shortstop, so he was great at shortstop. He proved that right off the bat. And then they moved him to second base, and he was doing great at second base. And then after that, they moved him to first base. And after a bit of training, he was he doing bad? I
I
wouldn't say
can't
so.
imagine he was doing
No.
poorly. Yeah.
So I mean, as rookie of the year, I mean, you've got someone who not only knows how to bat well, but they know how to play shortstop, second base, and first base all pretty incredibly well. And that's just from what I saw in the movie. I don't exactly know, what happened in real life. So I mean, yeah, they can't deny facts.
Yeah.
Can't deny facts.
It comes down to
It doesn't matter about race or anything like that. If there's someone who's great, he's great.
it comes down to facts don't care about your feelings, and
Yeah.
we see a lot of the clips of at some point they're on a road trip, either going to a game or coming back from one, and they're looking to get gas, and they put the gas in the hose, and he goes to use the restroom, and
I love that right off the bat.
for some reason, he obviously can't, and the guy says it like you can't use that there, and he's like, well, and he says that's fine. Then take the nozzle out of the tank, and we'll get our 99 gallons of gas somewhere else.
Just so they remember, this was back when before he was in the major leagues. This is back when he was completely with an African American team.
Yeah.
And he gets off the bus, and everyone gets off the bus, and he's going to use the toilet, and the guy tells him he can't use the toilet because at the time
50s.
Right, because 50s or actually 40s. No, this is 45.
That's true.
Yeah. He goes, why you can't use the toilet, and so he says, well, go and pull the hose out. We'll go. We'll take our 99 gallons of gas somewhere else. Which is motivation for money. Which is that's the second time in the movie. I remember we talked about it there for a second. That's the second time where money was the motivation, or at least it was presented to the audience that way. Where he kind of pauses for a second. The guy who's filling up, and he's like, "Man, is racism really going to win me this sale, or am I just going to have to accept, how things are?" And so, he just decides to go and keep on filling up and let him use the toilet, which is the right call. You need just like really like that much pride, or pride.
Yeah.
But, no, yeah, he calls him out on it, like, oh yeah, well, I mean, we're going to fill up no matter what. We'll fill up with someone else who's willing to let me use the toilet. I love that.
Yeah.
Man. That really, like, seeing his face when he realized, oh, I'm about to lose out on 99 gallons of gas for a sale. Ugh.
It really set the tone, because you see the moment of like,
it was very early on.
Yeah, but it for the gas attendant being like, what is it really harming letting him use the toilet? Like, nobody. You see the gears turn in the guy's head about like, all right, fucking go. Like,
It honestly makes me think of the movie The Help. Have you ever seen that?
I have not.
Well,
I know what you're talking about.
We're gonna go onto that, but I mean later on. Maybe it's not a sports movie, but
sure.
A woman fired someone over using the toilet.
Yeah,
it's like, what difference does it actually? What are you doing? So yeah, especially when it comes to a 99 gallon sale. Yeah.
So he gets to the point where, he's at, spring training. He's with the Montreal team, and they're talking about, if he's going to play, because he was a long time, first baseman. So one of the reporters, which, I mean, when it comes to journalism, especially in this era, like, the New York media is the biggest one. California is one thing, it's bigger now than it was then, but the New York media is probably the most, like, shark level that it can be. And he goes up to him. He goes, you're a first baseman. You're coming for Pee Wee Reese's job, and he, with the wherewithal to say, listen, he plays for Brooklyn. I'm still trying to make Montreal, which is the perfect answer. And you can see them be like, oh damn, like I didn't expect that. And he goes, what are you gonna do if one of these white pitchers throws at you? And he just very calmly says, guess I'll duck. And it was perfect. It was like he handled it perfectly. And granted, that is the first
professional.
Yeah, that is the first round in this, boxing match of racism that he deals with, where
it's not even the first round. That's the first, like, little tiny jab.
Yeah,
that's the first jab.
So the first, round one goes to Jackie, because he's like, in his mind, he's like, all right, I'm going to go, I'm going to go play. And they play the exhibition game where he gets walked in his first at bat, because again, you don't want to be the guy that gives up the hit to the black player for some reason.
Well, the first two, I think they were trying to hit him.
Yes,
but he ducked like he said he would.
He said he would.
Yeah, he backed off. He ducked, and then the other two, they just went right by him.
Right,
but they were not, in that box.
Yeah.
So he gets walked, and then
So yeah, he the other two are ball, and he walks to first. And one of the best parts in that is that there's a younger black kid in the stands, and the he's cheering. And his mom's like, "What happened?" And he's like,
"Well, that's after he stole second and third."
Right, but so the
we're
point
talking
is,
about the walk to first, and then we got to cover the second.
Right, so
we're gonna have to talk about.
So he gets to first because of the walk, and he steals second and he steals third, which with the normal little back and forth that a pitcher and a base runner would have.
But I've never seen it done that fast. Oh, what I'm saying? Like no one has done it where, like, not only did they not get a pitch off or anything like that, he was able to steal second and then steal third and the guy could not get him once. He couldn't even get another batter out or anything like that.
Yeah.
In the meantime, it was all done within the same like minute. You know what I mean?
And I would assume this is a true story because, granted, this is an exhibition game. There's not going to be any statistics to prove that he got 3 stolen bases and stole home in 1 at bat.
That's a good point. Yeah.
But it just seems like it would make this might be a combination of stories put together to show
Eyewitness
you
accounts.
to show you this. But he gets to third, and at this point, like if you're the pitcher, like he's stolen 2 bases on you in a matter of seconds.
You haven't even gotten the next pitcher out yet,
and he
or on base.
And he goes to turn to throw for him again. He drops the ball. It's a balk, which means he gets to walk straight to home at that point. And there's a younger black fan in the audience that's going crazy, and it's like, Jackie scored, and the mom's like, but he didn't do anything. And the best line in the movie, he goes, yes, he did. He discombobulated the man. And like, this is a kid that's a straight up SAT word. This is not a kid that should know that word yet at his age. But it was, again, in his mind, round 2 goes to Jackie. I handled the press. I got, without even having to swing the bat.
Handled the pitcher.
Yeah.
And the thing is, the pitcher even got off the mound at one point and goes, don't you know any better?
Yeah.
When I step off, you need to get back and all that.
Yeah.
And he gets back and he's safe. And but I mean, he mentally fucked him.
Yeah.
From first base to second base to third base. And then even when he's moving from third base and like just the way he physically motioned for home and all that.
He trots in a slow motion.
Well, he was kind of like jumping and all that. He was really fucking with him mentally. I think. And so he goes to, pull up, and then the ball falls out the back, and like you said, it's a balk. And I thought that was great. And we even talked about the kid for a second. We talked about it, and I mean, I'm a teacher. I've got 5th graders who don't know what the word discombobulated means.
Sure.
So I was really impressed with that.
Yeah.
I know it's Hollywood. I'll admit,
Right.
It's Hollywood, but still, that was impressive.
Yeah. I mean, again, when you look at movies, we've handled, Friday Night Lights, that was a completely fictional story, and then we handled Invincible, which was a, factual story for, I'd say, that's a 95% factual story. This being as far back as it is, we're kind of taking liberties on some. We assume a lot of this happened, but as a movie itself, it was extremely entertaining for that whole.
Yes,
that whole back
I'm
and
going to
forth.
go and give credit to Hollywood and all that. I understand that. Like not everyone knows what discombobulated means.
Yeah.
I'm also not downplaying any teachers out there because I'm a PE teacher, so I don't even teach words.
Yeah. You teach, running and shit.
Physical stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so as the
cut some of this.
as he gets to the point where he's, they kind of gloss over the fact that yes, the first year he makes Montreal, he does not make Brooklyn, which was the goal, and they generally gloss over his first year in the minors. I don't know that you see much of it. You find out later he bats over 600 or whatever it was. So
46. They only did. You're talking about 1946?
Yeah.
Yeah, they did
over
only do like 2 games in that, and then they went straight on to 47. Yeah.
So,
right.
Which is the year again? You're back at spring training. You're back in Sanford, Daytona area, and he's it probably should be mentioned. Other than Chadwick Boseman being Jackie Robinson, the other most important character in this movie is Wendell Smith, who's actually the reporter that's been covering this whole thing. And I would imagine a lot of the factual information for this movie is probably from his articles and his transcripts.
He's covering it from the get-go, and I want to go and throw out something that I didn't realize until just now, which was when he had that first interview, that first round that you were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
He steps back because all the reporters that come around him are white, and he's not allowed to be with them, I would assume. He's kind of laughing from behind, though, at Jackie's responses, but he can't exactly
interject or anything.
Exactly. He can't interject. He can't intermingle the same way that they can with him. And I didn't think about that until just the second. So
he actually explains, he's like, do you ever wonder why I'm on the third baseline with my typewriter? It's because I'm not allowed in the press box. So it's one of those, this movie could have easily, 42 is a perfect name for it.
It could have just been a documentary.
Jackie Robinson being on the cover is great. But like the whole movie, you could have twisted it slightly and made the whole movie from his perspective, and it might have made it, maybe even more interesting.
Right, but I mean, but it's also historical in the fact that this wasn't just affecting him. This affected other people around him. And I think that was the point of that scene. When he tells you, you think you're the only one that is
deals
going
with
through.
this,
Yeah, you think you're the only one that's going through this sort of thing, So yeah, I do think it affected. It's not just it's not an exaggeration. It's a historical document in a way.
And there's even the situation where, like, Jackie, I mean, I would assume historically this is probably proven, but in the movie, basing off that, he's a very humble guy. He's not someone that wants the spotlight, even though the spotlight's on him. And while the team is even in spring training, they're staying at hotels or whatever. He stays with, like, it's just a local small town family in Sanford. And the first time he gets there, the wife says, "What do you serve when a hero's coming to dinner?" And he's not comfortable with that at all. And he's like, "Not a hero, I'm just a ball player." All this. He's trying to downplay it as much as he can when really it's not something that needs to be downplayed. And there's this weird scenario where,
well, the guy who owns the place, he says, "Well, actually, you impact everyone in this area.
Yeah.
I mean, our children are looking up to you.
They're playing baseball now, and
right.
they never did."
Yeah, exactly. So, he had to. You never actually got to meet the wife, sadly.
Yeah.
But I mean, you got to meet the owner of the house, and he was explaining the situation of, like, this is the impact you have. And this is, once again, we're going back to previous podcasts where we talk about the impact of sport on actual real life, the impact of sport on communities. And this is a perfect example of that. And I cannot underplay that. Continue.
Yeah, no, and I love the, after that first game where he, steals all the way to third and box to home, and Jackie's asleep, and Wendell and the owner of the house, they're sitting outside. They might be having a drink. They're just enjoying the day. They're really, soaking in the moment for today, if nothing else.
It was a win for the race.
Yeah. And they're sitting there. They're not, they're not going crazy, but they're just soaking in the moment. And a guy gets out of his car. He's like, "Where is he?" Like, "Who is it you're looking for, sir?" Like, playing dumb a little bit.
Right.
And,
well, they knowingly looked at each other, and he goes, "Well, this could be innocent. It could be much more. So, who are you looking for?"
Yeah.
And it was that kind of way.
And we even talked about this. He says, we're looking for the ball player, and I still, to this day, I don't know if the guy that went there, what his intentions was, because he basically tips him off. He's like, if he's here in a couple hours, we got some people that might not be happy that he's here. So Wendell wakes up Jackie, and they gets him in the car, and they take off, and it's very fun. It's really the first time they get to bond, because he starts laughing. He's like, "We got you out of there because we thought you want to stand and fight." And he's like, "Why would I fight a group, an angry mob by myself? Like, I'm hot-headed. I'm not that hot-headed."
Well, they say he's hot-headed, but the thing is, he thought he was going to get cut from the team.
Which
so
is the next
that's
line,
why
yeah.
they thought they were leaving. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to ruin it.
Well, no. He does. He laughs it off. He's like, "Oh, I thought I was cut from the team," and he doesn't quite get Jackie yet. And it's something that it comes together in this car ride, because that's when you said you're not the only one that this is tough for. And he's like, "Listen, man, you've been here since the beginning, and I appreciate that, but I'm not used to that. I'm not used to asking for help or needing help."
That's the thing, though, is even if there was a whole mob out there ready to, lynch him or whatever, I have a feeling he would be ready, even straight out of sleep. I'm talking about, and that feeling where you get woken up abruptly or anything like that. I think he would have been ready to fight, and that's why Harrison Ford's character, I can't remember his character.
Mr. Ricky, let's call him that.
He's the one who called, didn't he? And said, "You need to get him out of there.
Yeah.
Get him out of there because he's going to be ready to fight and all that." And so, that's what he did. But, I mean, he's laughing it off like, "Oh, I thought I was cut from the team."
Yeah.
But I really think that had the situation been where he had been there, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I guess I can't say.
It's very hard to say.
But
it's safe to say
he's definitely a fighter. He's
story,
not going to go down laying down.
This story could have gone way different if he was still in that house when that mob got there.
Well, that's true.
This could be this might not have made a movie. It would have been a blip in a documentary about racism against baseball.
Charlie Thomas.
Yeah.
Would have been a Charlie Thomas movie. I don't know how.
And I don't know that movie's been made. So
we'll have to.
Other than drunk history,
we'll have to watch that episode and see how it ended. What happened to him?
But in that car ride, he explains, like, "Listen, man, I'm not used to people either needing help or even getting it." And he breaks the tension with, "Are you cool with me still driving you where we're going, or should you get out and walk?"
Yeah, that was later on. They knew each other for like a year or two down the road. That was a different card. But yeah, he goes, well, because he gets off the airplane.
Yeah.
right? And he's about to call for a cab, and he's like, well, okay, you got a car?
Yeah.
So that was a different car ride, but then he starts taking him where he needs to go, and that's when they talked about, oh, this doesn't just affect you, this affects me as well.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't need any help or anything like that, well, you want to get out?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's the moment they really bond. I think before that it was a very, like the gap between them was there.
They had known each other for like a year,
Right.
year and a half. It was 90. It was 45 to 47, but yeah, they hadn't really talked a whole lot.
Not real, other
No,
than interviews
that
or
one.
whatever.
There was one car ride, like you said, where they left town. They went to Daytona, and then like the next scene they were in to land. But other than that, no, he was just typing for him the whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah, they didn't really know each other.
So at this point, really the biggest thing, he plays for Montreal for the year, and then it comes to the point where again his, Mr. Ricky's plan is for him to play at this point, and it really comes down to him and Pee Wee Reese. Is he gonna take his job? And then you get to the point where some of the Dodgers write a petition about basically either they're not going to take the field or they just don't want to play with them. And interestingly enough, one of the players is Billy Riggins from Friday Night Lights, who we have seen, in a previous review, and he's the guy that says, I want to be traded, and he's like, all right, well, I'll see what I can do, but in the meantime, like, don't not try for the team. And he goes, oh, do you think I'd quit on the team? And he basically says, like, sounds like you already are. So
It sounds like you're quitting on yourself.
Right, and it's a very, well put scene where the guy, like, it's reactionary, and it hits the point where he's like, I'm doing this because I've been told that I should be outraged. I'm not really outraged, but I'm told that I should be.
It's one of those, you're influenced by the people around you.
Mm-hmm.
Sadly, it's like he's, we were talking about your first influence is your family, but outside of that, it's your friends, it's, school, it's stuff like that. Well, right now, at this point in the movie, it's his team. And some of his teammates, the ones that he is closest with, are influencing him to think a certain way. And so he thinks, oh, well, a black person on my team is a wrong thing, so trade me to someone else, especially since they started a petition. So, yeah, that's Billy Riggins from Friday Night Lights. We also realized that Billy and Tim's dad, whoever plays him, he's also in the movie for a short time. He plays Clay.
He's the original Brooklyn Dodgers manager who actually gets suspended for a year for adultery, I guess, for lack of better words.
No, that's someone else. It's
okay.
Brett Cullen. He plays Clay Hopper. He was
Billy
and Tim's dad, and I think he was managed for just a few minutes or something like that.
Yeah. So you have that interesting dynamic of the Dodgers manager getting suspended for a season for adultery, essentially.
Yeah, and I've always, don't get me wrong, that's a bad character flaw. I'm not saying adultery is okay or anything like that, but there's got to be a separation between professional work and your personal life.
Yeah.
And I understand that, especially when it comes to politics and all that. Well, personal life speaks to the person's character, and you don't want someone with bad character leading the country or even a county or anything like that. But this is, it's baseball. It's like, okay, well, even if he has bad character morals, well, never mind. I guess I can't. The whole movie is about character morals. Yeah. No, I'm gonna go and I'm eating my own foot as I say this. But I did like what was his name? Dumasher?
Yeah.
It almost sounds like douchebag. Sorry. I liked, first of all, I liked the actor who plays him. But I did like him as a coach or as a manager for that team initially, because he did stick up for Jackie, because even though he had adultery playing against him, and when I say playing against him, I mean he set himself up for that. That's his own fault, blah blah blah. But when that one player started the petition, he called all the players into one room and he told them, "You can wipe your ass with that petition." He literally told him, look, Jackie is staying on the team. You can wipe your ass with this petition. Get over it. Jackie's not the first one. There's going to be more. There's going to be more players coming this way and all that. And you can either quit out or you can just get the fuck over it and keep on playing and being competitive, because that's what sport is all about. You know, he didn't even really think about race. He really thought of it just as a business. And I'm going to go ahead and short him right there, because, you know, it's not just a business. It is more than that. It's sport and all that. And yes, it does translate to real life. And so that's why I'll admit where I was wrong, where, you know, it character does matter.
Yeah.
You know, and his morals do matter.
But you can have good morals in one avenue and then bad avenues in another, or bad morals in another, and it clearly he's someone
it gets kind of fuzzy there, and that's why I'm going to go and say I was wrong about what I said earlier. But I still like him as an overall character. He's got a big flaw. Adultery is not okay. But as a coach, especially that one speech that he had, I can give him some respect for that, because, you know, because he was just, get the fuck over it. You know what? Get the fuck over it. Jackie's on the team. We're not kicking him off. You can, you know, throw your petition, shove it up your ass. Fuck you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, we're doing this.
And I love the conversation. Granted, when he's with the woman that's not his wife, he gets a call in the middle of the night where, you know, Mr. Ricky's like, hey, listen,
I think that's one of the reasons I love him, is because he was so short. Like it's the middle of the night. Get the fuck off the phone. I don't want to talk to you now.
But he goes, listen, man, Jackie's more than likely going to be a Dodger, like a Brooklyn Dodger. And he's like, and I believe the line is like, I'll start an elephant in right field if it helps us win. Like, I don't give a shit. Like, give me.
I don't care about race. Give me someone who can win.
He was very Belichickian in this, where he's just like, if it helps me win, I don't care. Like, how many years was he in prison? I don't care. Like, you know, not that Jackie was. I'm just saying in general.
Right. He doesn't care about race or gender or anything like that. Mm-hmm. He cares about wins. He was strictly a businessman, which, again, to a certain point was a flaw, because sport is not just a business. Yeah. Although nowadays,
it's very much a business.
Yeah, a lot of people have proven that. Mm-hmm. But sport is sport, you know, and he was very upfront and cut about it, you know, where I don't care the color of your skin, like you said. I don't care if he's zebra stripes, you know. He's helping us win. That's all that matters, you know. Same if you don't help us win, you're out.
Yeah. And, you know, a handful of guys kind of sort of start coming around, and
it takes a little bit.
It does, but I love this didn't need to be, if this scene wasn't in the movie, it would not take away from it. But like, there's not a lot of like comedy in this movie, but they threw us one bone where there's one player like, hey Jackie, why don't you shower with us after the games? And he's like, I'm not trying to make anybody uncomfortable. And his way of letting Jackie know that he's accepted is saying, hey man, come shower with me. And then he immediately is like, that's not what I meant. And it's one of the few.
Jackie, I need you to come shower with me. Yeah. And Jackie, will you please come shower with us as a team?
And it might be the only
comedy scene.
The only other part is you know, they're playing a game in, I think it's against the Milwaukee Braves at the time, but
I'm gonna go back to this.
And the you know, the police officer says, he kicks him out of the game after he scores, and he's telling the story to his wife after. He's like, what'd you do? And he's like, I'm a go. And then that's like you literally get two like comedy scenes in the whole movie, and that's it. But you had something about you want to talk more about the showers real quick.
Which is funny, because the guy in the scene was digging his hole, and now I'm digging my hole. Yes. Because he was like, well, you know what? It's okay. We all want you to come shower with us. And he just kept giving him this look like, really? Like, this is what you're saying to me? These words are coming out of your mouth.
And he can't stop it. He's trying to, you know.
He's trying to make it as comfortable as possible, but as he does that, he is digging that fucking hole more and more. Yeah. I remember we were laughing our ass off.
Yeah. And in that
such an innocent guy.
in that other comedy scene, a wholesome moment comes out of it where he's joking about like, oh, I'm a getting, because clearly he probably didn't do that. He probably just, without saying a word, you know, left. And probably one of the better scenes in the movie where they're fixing like a telephone pole on the other side of the street, and this guy comes over, and he's like, you know, play fighting with his wife, and you know they stop like because he thinks he's gonna have an altercation.
Swinging around.
Yeah, and the guy's like, I want you to know something, and he's like, oh yeah, what's that?
He has his wife behind him.
Oh yeah, he's ready for an altercation.
He's ready to protect her. He's ready to fight.
And he's like, you know, I'm hoping you make good. Again, 40s and 50s talk. I'm hoping that you make good and there's a lot of people here that feel the same. And the little touch about this that I liked is as he's walking across the street, he notices there's a woman there, and he takes his hat off. And there's not a lot of people in this era that, a woman of color would not merit the removal of the hat. But for this particular gentleman, felt the need to do that. And it's a small token of respect that doesn't come very often for them.
There's two. I mean, he shows his support, and he takes off his hat before he even speaks and all that. Hey, from across the street.
Yeah.
But he's just trying to get their attention, but
before
it
they
sounds
take
a
off,
little like aggressive. Yeah, exactly. And so he, crosses the street, takes his hat off, and shows his support and says, what the people of DeLand, I think it was DeLand, right?
I believe so.
I'm going to go ahead and stick up for DeLand right now.
Yeah.
The people of DeLand, are supporting him and all that. A lot of people around there want to see him succeed and go somewhere.
Good is the phrase.
Yeah. And then as he goes to leave, he says, "Ma'am," and he nods his head. And that
just acknowledging her.
Yes, again, it goes right with the hat thing, where in the presence of a lady, you take off your hat, and then as you leave, "Ma'am," he's not only showing, he showed Jackie a hell of a lot of respect, but he's showing her respect too, because she's on the equal level of any other lady that he would meet.
And you hit that moment where you realize that that's the first person that showed, for the era, common decency. And you're like, wow, that's a really nice guy. He's not actually a nice guy. He's just a decent human being, which is funny that the bar is lowered that much at the time.
I didn't think about it that way. But yeah, you're right.
But, granted, for the era and for the time, that is a huge move.
Everyone should have already been acting that way.
But they're not.
He's stepping up, and he's doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And he's really going out of his way, because he could have just kept working on what he was working on across the street.
Yep.
But he wanted to let them know, not just let him know, but let them know that he cared. Excuse me.
It's funny. It reminds me of we reviewed Invincible, and they're at the restaurant, and the one guy goes up to, "Are you Vince Papali?" Like, I don't care what anybody says. You're doing great out there. It's that one little moment of justification that would probably mean the world to the person in that situation. Yep.
And I think that's why it gets included in the movie, because it almost makes you wonder, was that included in certain memoirs, certain correspondence, certain recordings?
He must have had somebody at some point, it must have made such an impact that it was worth recording.
Exactly.
Which I think is the point you're making.
Yeah.
And
doesn't matter exactly the setting or exactly
it could have been in a different spot, but
yeah.
He wanted to show that at some point,
it could have been multiple people.
Yeah, he wanted to show that at some point somebody showed support in the time that wouldn't have been the cool move.
Yeah.
So there's probably two major scenes left in the movie. The one where, and this gets me every time. And for those watching the YouTube version, I got a Phillies sign right behind me, and this part just always makes me physically uncomfortable. The most racist scene in the movie happens to be against the Philadelphia Phillies, and the manager at the time. He's called, and apparently was a former Brooklyn Dodger player, then went on to manage the Phillies at the time. And it's the most, he's out of the dugout yelling obscenities, racist things at Jackie while he's in the batter's box. He said, which one of your players' wives are you climbing on? That's probably the only one I'm comfortable saying, because everything else is not words that would come out of my mouth. But from a movie standpoint, how uncomfortable as an actor must it be to play that role? And it's a well enough known actor. I'm going to look up just now as you talk, but
I'm going to go ahead and call him out, and in a good way.
Yeah.
Alan Tudyk played this Philadelphia manager. Now, the character was downright despicable, pathetic, horrible.
Which was the goal.
Downright just horrible person. Alan Tudyk, though, if you know him from anything, you know him from his voice work. He does a hell of a lot of work for Disney. He does K2SO for Star Wars. He's done a lot of animal voices for Disney. He's a very innocent guy. He played Steve the Pirate in Dodgeball.
That's right. Yep.
He's a very decent actor. He's a very good actor overall. Actually, very versatile. So I'm gonna
when you look at it that way. Yeah.
I don't mean to kiss his ass or anything, but you know what, Alan Tudyk. Anyway,
but when you go from racist to Steve the Pirate,
like
and
I said, versatile,
between, respect,
yeah, and to take on a role like that where the role is going to be racist, they're going to be yelling some. Man, I remember thinking as it happened, I just wanted to just beat the guy down, just some horrible things that he's saying to him, and again, when you hate the character, it makes you kind of, in a sense, respect the actor, because that's what they're aiming for. They want you to hate their character, and he has to really step outside of that comfort zone to accomplish that, especially because this only came out 7 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's not that racism is over or anything like that, but it's not exactly easy to portray that level of racism.
It's only gotten more uncomfortable than when it came out.
Right, exactly. Racism is still around.
Yeah.
But it's not as prevalent. It's not as just outright spoken the way that he did it. And so that was one thing that I have to give Alan Tudyk some credit for, is just not saying that it's okay to be completely okay about that, but he's not an outright racist or anything. He's not a racist at all, for all I know. So the fact that he was able to step into that role and actually, able to do that, and then he had to eat his own foot later. So that tells me, as an actor, like, he was willing to be that character who,
maybe he was comfortable with it because he knew the character was going to get his comeuppance.
Exactly. The character gets to exactly what you said, get his comeuppance.
So, you have really probably the most, well, there's two iconic scenes in the movie. One is after that at bat, Jackie goes into the tunnel, breaks the bat on the wall, and screams.
The most emotional scene,
without a doubt. Down to his knee. He's broken for.
Well, it took him everything he had to
not do it in front of people.
He's pausing. He's looking at the guy. He pauses. He does what he does, and it's messing with him mentally, which I think was. I mean, not only was the guy racist, but he was trying to mess with his game.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so he does one hit, which is an immediate out. He does another pop-up. And eventually after that, he's been talked to so many times by this guy. This is called every name in the book. He goes into the tunnel. But before he goes into the tunnel, he pauses and he looks around at the guy, and he is squeezing the bat. Because, if you wanted the bat to be a murder weapon, it could be. Exactly. Yeah. And Jackie's got a swing. We know he's got a swing. And he's staring at him, and he's squeezing it. He's gripping it with his hand. And his wife is off in the stands, and she's saying, look at me, look at me, look at me. And he actually doesn't. I was kind of surprised.
Yeah.
I thought he was going to look at her, but he didn't. He just turned around immediately and went back into the tunnel. And he started swinging at the wall, just breaking the bat. And he broke it down to his handle after 3 or 4 swings. And then you see the silhouette of, Harrison Ford's character pop up, the owner, because he knew this was going to happen eventually.
He left his little private box and headed right to that tunnel.
He knew.
Yeah.
He even in the beginning, when he first talked to him in their first interview, he was giving him situations that all happened.
Yeah.
The going to the hotel, the managers messing with him from the other side, the crowd messing with him, blah, blah, blah. There's a million different situations that could happen. And he presented that to him in the first meeting they ever had. And so he went down, because that was the one that messed with him the most in the movie. I for all I know, there's more that happened in real life.
And that's the part that upsets me as a Phillies fan. This situation happened several times in his career, multiple triple.
They could have done a sequel about
triple
the next
digits of time,
4 years. Yeah,
and it's really just the bad luck of the draw that my favorite baseball team gets depicted as.
It wasn't bad luck of the draw; it was history.
No, but what I'm saying,
there could have been more. Yes,
that's what I mean.
Yeah,
they could have zoned in on any other, issue with a manager or a player or whatever.
Yeah.
Granted, it happened, and if it happened, it should be mentioned. But watching it, the scene is uncomfortable, and for me, it's double uncomfortable because it's my team. When you're a New York Yankees fan, you're used to being depicted as the villain in sports movies because they're the most successful and the most whatever. You're used to that. Same Cowboys, Steelers, whatever. Patriots in the next 5 years when movies gets made. But the Phillies are not a team that's typically depicted as a villain. They're a very for a team being in such a large market, they're a relative underdog in movies. Like in Major League, my favorite sports movie, which maybe we'll get to one day, it's the Cleveland Indians against who? The New York Yankees. The Yankees know how to be depicted as a villain. But to see this, it may be uncomfortable for 2 reasons. For the context and the dialogue, and then that's my team. They're wearing my cap. They're wearing my city across the chest.
Yeah, I understand.
And it's a whole nother level. And I'm like, God,
I just remember
the scene is probably only like 2.5 minutes long, but to me it lasts like a day. Like it's uncomfortable.
Shit, it's the same as when they yell, bada bada bada, but he's yelling the other name, he's saying that. And when he starts getting real personal about, oh well, you must have done that to that player's wife, blah blah blah,
right? Yeah,
and after he's squeezing that bat, I remember choking up a little bit,
and
I'm thinking like, I don't know how he kept control. I wanted to swing, and it's a TV screen that's in front of me, what I'm saying, which I'm gonna go ahead and say, Alan Tudyk, that's great acting. If I want to hit you and you're in a TV screen, that shows that's good acting. Am I right?
That reminds me of, as the pro wrestling fan that I am, if you're a good heel, bad guy, if you make me hate you and that was your job, it's great job.
Yeah, and it's the same thing for female actresses. If you play a great villain or a great, bitch or anything like that, I have to tell my dad this all the time.
And you're just like, oh,
she must be a great actress, and he anyway.
But this scene luckily ends with a small, paper thin silver lining. For the first time, one of his teammates comes to his aid.
Right.
And he storms out of the dugout and confronts the Philly manager.
Well, okay, so he goes in, he breaks the bat, he's crying, and
Mr. Ricky.
Thank you. Yeah, he's there. And
Harrison Ford. You can call him Harrison
Ford. I was about to say Harrison Jones. I can't, for whatever reason, I can't get that. Harrison Jones. Harrison Ricky. There we go. That's going to be his new name. He's not there to comfort him.
No.
He is there to tell him,
this is what you signed up for.
This is what you signed up for. This is the impact that you have, not only on our youth, on history. You are making history. You are here to do a job. You're here to get bases, hits, catches. And at one point he gets up and he tells him, you don't know how it feels or anything like that. And he goes, no,
I don't
know how it feels. And I got fucking chills right now thinking about it, because that's as honest as you can get. I don't know what it's like in your shoes. I don't know how it feels to be called those names, judged based on, skin color or anything like that. But what I do know is the facts. And I do know how this is going to play out if you do this and this. And so he gets up and he says, I need a new bat, because he just smashed the other one to smithereens.
He had to break the tension somehow.
Thank God that wall was not, Alan Tudyk's head.
Yeah. And he, I think it's in this scene where he mentions, like, I was driving through some streets and I saw a kid, he was swinging with his arm out. It was a little white boy and he was pretending to be you, which was a big.
Because he was sanding up his hands.
Yes, that's the other thing.
And he when he went to swing, he did it with his arms out.
Yeah.
Long
and
my arms look kind of good right
now. the
I haven't seen myself in a mirror in a while.
The concept of, and again, it's funny that we can bring this back to Invincible, the last movie we reviewed, where Papali's driving through the city and he sees a little kid, a football rolls out in the street and he gets it, and the kid had 83 in duct tape put on the back of his green shirt.
I'm gonna be that asshole that says it all comes back around to the impact of sport on community.
And it's a great moment.
He talks about how a white kid wants to be a black man.
Yeah,
that's impactful, especially at the time, And I mean, hell, I can tell you that as a PE coach. Just the other day, I was doing a throw and catch test with a lot of my kids, and we do it with tennis balls, especially for K1 and 2 kids. And whenever I catch one of those balls with one hand, you know who they mention? Odell.
Yeah. Odell Beckham, yeah.
They're like, oh, you just Odell'd that. And I'm like, it's a tennis
and you
ball.
know what?
No, but sure, you know what? I'm in support of that, because that helps out with, African Americans.
And you know what? We're getting older, because before, if you catch something with one hand, before it was an Odell, it was a Moss. You mossed that.
Oh, right. Yeah, I remember that.
So that is something that has been a thing.
But I'm glad that 5, 6, and 7-year-olds know who Odell is. Yeah. And in a way, not in a way, but they, just outright respect him. Mm-hmm. If you catch something with one hand, you're automatically Odell.
You're Odell or you got Moss.
Yeah,
which is
so I think that's awesome. I get to see it in my job every day. That's something I can be proud of.
Yeah.
It's like, sure, I can be proud of myself, but I mean, it's just a tennis ball. The fact that they're referencing someone else who is one of their heroes, that's a big deal. I fucking like that. I love it.
So after the whole, Pee-wee does stand up for him, which they do mention.
Well, we were going to talk about when he goes back out of it.
Yeah, so he I think it's funny. He's in the tunnel enough that basically, by the time he's collected himself, I'm up to bat again.
Yeah, he's up again. Yeah,
that's really the one like movie crack, and it's like, okay, he just
that is a plot hole. I didn't think about that.
He perfectly lost his shit in just enough time to
maybe
go back
they
out.
Jumped ahead and then he's up again.
Well, because you got to think, the other team goes to bat, and then your team has to go all the way through the batting order to get to you, and then he comes up and he hits the home run and he wins.
Maybe he was down there for like 20 minutes. It was the same inning.
Well,
I don't
as
know.
someone who
I'm trying to
as someone who works in baseball, a half inning could be anywhere from 30 seconds to a half hour.
Yeah.
So it really, like you can't really call him on that, but
either way, he's up again.
Yeah.
And then he finally does. What does
that's
he
his home run.
Does he hit home run?
Yep.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So you get to the point. That's the most iconic other part, and then towards the end, a part of you could end the movie right there, and the only reason you don't is because there's the iconic picture which I will post now about Pee Wee Reese throwing his arm around Jackie Robinson, and maybe it's just my humor. I don't think most people realize this was supposed to be funny, and I don't know if this was an actual quote, but he says, because they're in Pee Wee Reese's hometown, and he's like, I want people to know who I am, like that I understand this. Well, so he's from, I think he says Arkansas, Cincinnati.
Oh, really?
Cincinnati is the closest. If you're from Arkansas and you want to see him play,
really?
It was by proxy. It was the closest,
okay. That's like us in Edgewater saying Daytona.
Well, let's say in these days there was no teams in Florida, and we had a good friend that played for the Braves, and we took a drive to Atlanta. It would be us doing that. So it's close enough. But he tells us
the Rays and the Marlins do exist.
Not in the 40s, they don't.
No. Okay. Yeah, Mr. Logic and
I'm
factual.
No, in this era. I'm saying in this era.
Yeah.
But so he, and maybe this wasn't supposed to be funny, but I laugh every time where he's like, next game we'll all wear 42. That way they can't tell us apart. And I don't know if it was supposed to be funny, but I love the thought of that. Because that's how you're supposed to, with an extreme, that's how you want to look at it. We're all ball players.
You want to say, yeah, we're all unique, but at the same time, we are all people.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny because, that statement and a lot of the statements that are made nowadays, it's got a double entendre, and it's usually meant out of respect, as in we are all people. Mm-hmm. We all deserve the same rights and all this. But at the same time, we are all unique. Mm-hmm. We are all special in a certain way. So it's, what I mean? It's two different things, but at the same time, it's all meant out of respect.
And of course, years later, Jackie Robinson Day is a real thing. There is a day in the Major League season where every player on every team that plays on that day, and they try to make almost every team play, wears 42. I got the wrong side up. 42. So, and I have to tell, as we close out here, I have to tell this little story of my, role in sports. The minor leagues for the Tortugas, obviously they play in Daytona. The minor league number for Jackie Robinson was number 9. So they do a Jackie Robinson Day, and they have every player wear number 9 because obviously that was his number in the minor leagues. Last season, I had the honor of I was the audio technician, so I would play the walk-up songs for every player, and on an average day, I see a guy walking, I'm like, 13, that's Jose Garcia. 33, that's Tyler Stevenson. Boom, boom, boom. That day is a nightmare for me because every player's wearing the same number, and it makes it harder for you to realize who is up, and you don't want to play the wrong song. So, and I would imagine to an extent,
a piece of paper with all of them recorded.
I mean, I have that, but even a guy makes a catch out in the outfield, it's always easier. You see the number, you know who the player is. So for that day, you have to double check before you make any announcement, before you do anything, because everyone's wearing the same number. I love the gesture, but I just want to say for the people that work in baseball production, and I imagine it's even worse as an announcer and people that are in the major leagues, it's a nightmare. And it's a nightmare. It's a necessary nightmare because of what it represents. But I never would have thought of that unless I had the honor of being an audio technician for a baseball team. But the fact of I know this player by number. And granted, some players look different, but in the speed of the game, numbers. The reason numbers are on sports jerseys is for things like this,
identification.
So to give everybody the same number, it is a nightmare. It's a necessary nightmare, and I am honored to have that problem that I got to do at one time. But it's just something that most people wouldn't think of. I didn't think about it, and I wanted to share that for sure. But closing thoughts. What'd you think? 42. I've seen it a couple times. This was your first time watching it, so
I think it was
overall,
great. I can't wait to watch it again, and I can't wait to watch Pee Wee again because you're the one that kind of pointed out like, well, he'd be right up your alley and all that because he doesn't think about color or anything. He thinks about the competition.
Yeah.
So he was the original first baseman.
Yes.
And that when he was like, well, they're coming along with the petition and all that, seeing if he'll sign it. Well, he's going to take your job.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy's like, well, if he's better than me, then
he
sure,
should take it.
then he should take my job. Because that's what it's about. And he's like, man, don't get me wrong, there'll be another position for me.
Yeah.
No, I kind of like that. I liked Pee Wee, and I like that he was also part of the Friday Night Lights crew in a way.
Mm-hmm.
We had 3 Friday Night Lights actors in this, 2
which
from the show.
Which will be a constant thing with this series. If
sure.
there's a Friday Night Lights actor, they get mentioned in any movie we review.
So we had Billy Riggins and his dad. They were both from the TV show, and they were both in the movie. And Lucas Black, he played I forgot the character's name, but he was in the Friday Night Lights movie. I finally watched it, by the way. I don't know if we ever covered that, but I actually did.
I think you liked it more than I did.
It was good.
Yeah, but it's not better than the show.
No, not at all. I mean, yeah, absolutely.
Which
you can cover a lot more in the show.
The other person we can mention, he was Tokyo Drift, right?
The main guy in Tokyo Drift.
Yeah.
That's right. He keeps the same accent in all movies.
Yes.
He was he had the same accent in Tokyo Drift, the same accent in this 42. And the same accent in Friday Night Lights.
Yeah.
The same Southern accent. Not saying he's a bad actor, but he hasn't shown me any versatility.
No, maybe he's really good at the one thing he does.
Right.
Which is fine.
Right. Yeah, that's his specialty.
But
stick up for him all you want.
No, I don't mind the guy at all. I mean,
no. Lucas Black is a fine actor.
Yeah.
Tell you what, he's a hell of a lot better than I am.
I mean, yeah. I mean, what's funny, I've seen
Pee Wee.
movie
I liked Pee Wee though. I gotta say,
as a character.
Yes, because except for one part, and that's when he got that one piece of mail, and he decided to complain to the owner.
Which I'm glad you brought that up because he gets some hate mail, and then he goes to Mr. Ricky.
One piece of hate mail,
and he opens a filing cabinet, and he has like stacks of it.
Right, and he's been dealing with it silently the entire time. He hasn't mentioned it at all. That's Harrison Jones, the guy that I wanted.
Which, to be fair, he, goes through it silently. But he also, this was his idea. He knew what was coming.
Well, I mean, they even talked about it in the beginning. They said you're going to be considered an outcast and all that. And
he was like, "So be it."
He says, "So be it." And his wife is going to deal with all this trauma. Blah blah blah. And so he did that. Sorry,
as you pointed out.
Yeah, but so he pulls out these stacks and it's talking about killing his son, killing his family, blah blah blah, and he dealt with all of it. And actually, he informed the FBI. Yep. They said in the movie, he had informed each of the cities and all that. And I think that's he did it without like worrying the team. Yeah. That's so admirable. Mm-hmm. Jackie knew about it. Jackie knew because Jackie was also being threatened the entire time. Yeah. If the owner was being threatened, well, Jackie sure as hell was being threatened by a lot of people. That takes a lot of bravery.
I don't know
to do what's right, for sports, just for the name of sports. Like, I'm sorry.
I don't know that we'll ever get to this movie, so I don't mind mentioning this now.
We got the rest of our lives.
I don't know. I don't know that I could talk about this movie in full, but because the late great Gale Sayers passed away recently, so I rewatched it. But in Brian's song, it's a similar thing where they're the first white-black roommates in the NFL, and Brian Piccolo reads the hate mail to the black roommate Gale Sayers out loud, and he's like, "You must be the lowest scum of the earth," and he goes, "Did it say anything else?" Like, just the usual, "Love, Mom." And it just reminds me, like, to take it in the stride that he took it is, I guess, the point I'm trying to make. That, like, for him to take it silently, as you said, like, it's commendable.
It takes guts. Yeah. Well, you know what they said in the beginning? I need you not to have the guts to fight back, but the guts to not fight back.
Yeah.
and
turn the other cheek, which is another thing.
It was a Methodist thing. Yeah,
One of the main
not
reasons.
just Methodist, but it was a religious thing. You know, Jesus said that. You know, turn the other cheek. I'm not saying he should have, but damn, it took a lot of restraint too.
Because he does mention one of the main reasons he picked Jackie. He's like, he's a Methodist, I'm a Methodist. It had a lot to do with the selection too. So I mean, he expected him to
I think
do
that
what
was
it
the
says.
turning line too.
Yeah.
When he was talking about it, Jackie stood up and he got really upset with everything he was saying because he was playing all the people that would mock him.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he was real quickly going through like the hotel manager,
yeah.
And he says, and he turns around, he actually faces away from him when he says it, and you know, Jesus said, "When your enemy slaps you, you know, turn the other cheeks." Yeah, I don't know. It that takes an incredible amount of restraint. I've got a lot of respect. Yeah.
You know, in this movie, like you said, it's 7 years old or whatever it is, 7, 8 years old at this point. With the current climate of the world, which is not something I am qualified to talk about by any means, but I'll say in closing, with the way the world is right now, give this movie a rewatch because it actually opens up a lot for some people. Depending on, you know, regardless of how you feel, I think you can really shed some light on the way the world was, is now, and probably should be in the future. I thank you guys for checking out the Phil Talk Sports podcast. I want to thank Coach Luke for recording another review with us. Quick sip. Normally, this is the moment where we mention what we're going to review next. We have a couple that we're debating on, and given the anniversary of something, we're leaning towards We Are Marshall due to the 50th anniversary. As we record this on the day, the 50th anniversary of the plane crash. So we're leaning towards We Are Marshall. If that's not next, it'll be soon because that is a great movie. Yeah. And, again, another movie that you can really look into. It tells you a lot about sports and life, and that's kind of what we're about here when we review these movies.
Yeah,
but
it is not just sports. It is really, it's all about life.
It's a life podcast. The minds, the souls, and the hearts of the lives of everyone that watches sports movies.
Hey, we're human.
We are, and that's what it comes down to. But I want to thank you guys for watching and listening. Please subscribe if you're a YouTube watcher, and thank you all for listening.
Go UCF.
And we'll see you next time.
Cheers.
Go Knights. Charge on.
Charge on.